And the Oscar goes to Flo.
Flo.
Thank you to Blender, and I hope that it will open a lot of doors to independent animation filmmakers around the world.
All right, Gints, thank you so much for joining us here. You made this hugely successful film. You're in LA right now. You're going to this, big award show, but I want to kind of step back a little bit because, as they say, it's not about the destination. It's about the journey. And, you've not only directed these films, but you've animated, you've done music composition and all this stuff. But I want to know, how did you get into animation to begin with?
Yeah, well, I just started by doodling some sketches on the corners of my notebooks and kind of doing some Flash animation as a kid. And
Flash, wow.
And then maybe like when I was 15, I started to kind of be more fully kind of, paying more attention to it, just doing it full time and making like a proper short film. So I've made 7 short films trying out different media, like different techniques and hand drawn and stop motion and 3D. And so I wanted to make films, but it's kind of like live action films as well. But I felt kind of limited with what I could do. With animation, I had more freedom and I could tell fantastical stories or kind of take my time and not to worry about the light changing or whatever. So I kind of, focused on that for a while.
Now, I read somewhere that you didn't actually go to like art school because you grew up in Latvia. You're in Latvia, right? And there's no big art schools like they have in LA or anything. So you were basically self-taught, right? Yeah,
there is an art school and there's a film school, but there wasn't really like an animation kind of program. Now there is something like that, but I went to an art high school, so we had some classes there, but I was already making films before then, and I was kind of making the films while there, kind of in my free time.
Yeah.
So not really part of the program. I kind of learned by making films, and to me, that's kind of the best way to learn. I kind of like to go at my own pace, and so I learned by making these shorts, but also my first feature away, which was kind of like my unofficial film school where I did kind of do everything on my own, and that was my way of learning all these different tasks. So eventually, and that I have this chance now to work with the team, it helped me to kind of understand what everyone's doing.
Yeah, I watched Away. I know you've done many short films. It was crazy to learn that you worked on your first short film when you were 19, which, as an old fart like myself, I'm just like, kids these days, holy cow.
19, I made a bunch of shorts. I think I started when I was like 15. Yeah.
Oh, wow. All right. So you're making me feel even worse. But and the thing about like most of your films is like, much like Flo, is there's no dialogue whatsoever. So it really like goes to show how amazing a storyteller you are with just using these beautiful visuals, letting these characters kind of express themselves with, sometimes they don't even have like, mouth. Sometimes they don't even have those kind of expressions. But I kind of want to talk about, we'll get a little nerdy here and talk about like software and stuff like that, because I understand that you learned 3D in Maya, correct?
Yeah.
And then what your last short Away, that was done in Maya, and then you found your way to Blender. How did you end up doing that? Did you find the Blender Guru donut tutorial and just kind of fell in love? Or like,
yeah, Away is actually a feature, so yeah, I did that as well in Maya, and just learned by watching a lot of tutorials, and it wasn't that complicated there, especially since 2.8 they made Blender a lot more industry compatible, and it just I just did a lot of tests but I switched. But of course, it's helpful for an indie production because it's free, but it's also, I think, a great tool that we used Eevee, which is the real-time engine in Blender,
right?
Which was very helpful for Flow, and it's just I kind of now I'm so used to it. It would be hard to. I think I've forgotten how to use Maya. I haven't opened it in like 6 years, and
Wow.
So I'm really kind of all in Blender, and we're gonna use it on the next film as well. So
Oh, amazing. All
yeah,
right.
it's not it's a great tool, and it's like in a smaller production, I think it's much easier to switch. I think many of the bigger studios are not using Blender because they have their workflow and the pipeline, and it's kind of
Right.
hard to make changes. But because we're kind of building stuff from scratch, we could like do whatever we wanted. So yeah, it wasn't a problem. And even many of the animators who used to working in Maya, for them it took like less than a week to just figure out the different interface. But it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, I talked to so many, like I just started learning Blender recently, and I come from Cinema 4D, and translating the skills, if you already know a 3D app, is like you said, it takes you a week if you really know what you're doing in the 3D world. But did it take you how long did it take you to get comfortable with Blender? Because I understand you were learning Blender as you were building and like trying to create flow, right?
Yeah, I don't like. I'm still learning it, and of course, I still don't know many things about it. And but you don't need to know everything. And
Right.
but I was also just learning because like the stuff we do in Flow is a lot more advanced than what I did in a way when I used Maya. So I was just learning stuff in general. At in a way, there was no like all the everything was basically flat without the characters didn't have shadows, and it's a lot more kind of technically simple. And yeah, we needed in Flow. I think we needed something that felt more immersive and detailed, and so I had to learn about how shaders work because I used just flat colors on a way. So I had to figure out all these the texturing and the all the how the nodes work, and so it still kept like evolving until the end of production, like the look and all the yeah, just the textures and everything. There were because yeah, there wasn't like I did some tests before, but if I look back on them now, they're like I learned until the very end, and we kept adjusting things, and I think that my next film would be also like very different. I would like try things I don't know yet. So you always learn, and there are all these features coming out during production that we have to keep kind of learning, and yeah.
Was it hard to, I guess you have the luxury of, you're used to working by yourself. You evolve the look throughout, and then you're like, you settle on the look at the very end. Was it easy to like go back and adapt that to all the shots? Cause I mean, some of the shots, like you mentioned in an article, that one shot was like 5 minutes long, so updating that shader or whatever you were using might've been easy, cause that was all like one project file, I'm guessing.
Yeah, well, it's not like that I completely change the whole look at the end, but it's kind of learning some new idea, like some new techniques about yeah, just how light works, and just yeah, but it is very iterative, and it's kind of hard to know when it's finished. You can always keep improving it. You just have the deadline, and then you kind of have to let it go. But yeah, you often do kind of spend time redoing some stuff because now you learned something since then, since the time you did it, or now there are better tools available. Like uh, we kept updating the versions of Blender
Through
until quite
production.
late. So
Wow.
like during pre-production, it was much easier because it wasn't that big of a team, and the
Mhm.
files weren't really like linked. Everyone was working on their own files, but during production, when the animators worked, we stayed on the same version just for safety. But after production, during post, I did some tests and I opened these files with the newer version, and it all worked. And so I did update after production for the lighting and the rendering. So yeah, of course, it can be very dangerous. You can break some things, but I did
Right.
so many tests just to make sure that everything works.
Now, like scaling up, you worked with a team of about 40 people, and like we mentioned before, you all your other films, you've just worked by yourself. So one of the things that I thought was interesting is like I can't do anything unless I do like, I'm not a good drawer. I do like a terrible sketch first just to get my idea out. And then I'll bring it into 3D, start modeling. But you're like, no, I'm just going right into 3D and I'm just getting everything out. I'm not sketching anything. And even like, I love all of the behind the scenes that you've been posting on your socials. So if anyone's listening, watching, and are not following Gints, like go follow, because like you're really inspiring a lot of people and a lot of artists. So number one, thank you for doing all that work to like share all that stuff, because it's super eye opening and super impressive. But I wonder, was it super hard to get people to adapt to like the way you work, and even scaling up over, with 40 people there? Was there a challenge? Because I feel like flow is like, you base that on the whole story of flow is like, this cat's by itself, used to being by itself. It's batting everyone away. And then it's like, just kind of acquiescence, like, okay, all right, I guess I like you guys. We have to work together here.
Yeah, well, there were about maybe 50 people in the credits, but some of them worked for like just a day or two, or did like a piece of concept art. And so it wasn't like a big challenge to kind of integrate everyone. Like they worked independently basically. And so it wasn't, and they're like musicians and other people. So the actual team was much smaller. The people who's like worked for years, usually there's like 4 or 5 people working at a time. So it's a very small team, and it was manageable, and so that this allowed me not to be too overwhelmed by it. And but for many of them, they also hadn't worked in this way, and we were all kind of learning how to collaborate, and so yeah, it's just about figuring out how to convey my ideas, that it's all clear. And sometimes you can explain it with words, but sometimes words don't do justice, or it's kind of hard to explain some things. So it's much easier just to sketch something, whether it's like a quick hand drawn sketch, or it's a rough model, or even music that then the other people can take and kind of polish, and then might know the basics of these kind of skills, but I'm not an expert, and so I can like do like a rough version, and the other people who are much smarter than me in these kind of who are more specialized in this certain specific aspect, they can kind of bring a lot of more layers to it and depth. And but yeah, it's I don't know, I think it was best of both worlds, where I could be very hands on and involved, and I like the process. I like yeah, it's just fun. It feels like sometimes that can be more fun or relaxing than like actual, like now that I'm promoting the film, and which is also fun, but that can be a lot more kind of yeah, draining, or kind of it feels more intense in some ways, and I'm kind of missing just sitting by my desk and working on stuff. So that's why I wanted to have like a fairly small team, so I can be hands on, and I don't have to just be in meetings all day and just talking all day. I like to kind of just intuitively discover things. And I sometimes I don't know what I want and what the film is, so I just need to kind of sit down and experiment and kind of find it, and I can do that by kind of yeah, just working, and so that's my process. But I'm trying to figure out how to delegate some like more with each of the projects, so I can maybe focus more on the creative aspects, and maybe let other people do the technical stuff.
You got to give yourself some slack there, because you're used to doing everything. And even if you do half, I feel like that's a step in the right direction, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, there's no one way of doing things. And so we're not trying to kind of mimic the workflow of some of the bigger studios, because I don't think that would make sense. I think you need, like, every film should do things that are best for this type of a film. So we were kind of skipping some steps that usually my people do. Like, we didn't do storyboards, and there wasn't a lot of concept art, and it's just faster to for me kind of just going directly in 3D. But like I'm not really good at drawing, but there are probably other people who are great at it, and so for them it would make more sense to focus on that. So yeah, I just like by making the shorts and then my first feature, I kind of realized my strengths and weaknesses, and I can kind of work around those and kind of knowing what to avoid as well, and what to focus on.
Hey everybody, quick break here. If you're inspired by Gints and are wanting to dive into Blender yourself, be sure you head over to schoolofmotion.com for our new Blender for 3D Artists course. It's the perfect course for anyone who's learned another 3D app and wants to quickly transfer that knowledge over to Blender. From basic modeling to stylized Eevee renderers, we got you covered. Visit schoolofmotion.com to learn more. Now back to the show. So I'm sure it was great for everyone that was working for you to actually have someone that was in the trenches at one point too, like animating and stuff like that. So you're not just like a typical director that's totally has no idea what you're asking for, or knowing that if you ask for a certain thing, it's like a huge undertaking. Like you understood that. So I'm sure all your artists like really enjoyed that. But I was wondering about like, did you need to, like you just mentioned about how you're not doing things like a Pixar would or a DreamWorks or anything like that. Did you find that you needed to kind of create your own workflows? Because again, you're using Blender, and I don't know, like you're probably bending it to your will, pushing it to its limits. Did you like need any add-ons, or did you have to like have any people develop custom tools? Like I know your lighting and water dev, Martins, who I'm following on Twitter, he does like the water stuff, but like, was there any other type of people or technicians that you needed to bring on to do very specific things like the water?
Yeah, well, we used also some already like add-ons that were just published on different kind of libraries. Like we used geoscatter to kind of create all the plants, to scatter them on in the environments, and used animation layers, which helped me with the camera to create the handheld shakiness. So there are many kind of ready-made assets and tools we used. But some of the custom stuff we did. So yeah, it was helpful for me to have like there was so Konstantin Swishniewskis, who worked on the film. He did rigging, and he did like shaders, and so I don't know how to write code or to kind of create these tools, and it was great that I could ask him to, yeah, even when I'm kind of just designing the shot, to kind of create a script that could kind of automate some things, and that was very helpful that I had these developers that I can just give an abstract idea and they can figure out a way to do it. And there was just some scripts to make like clean up scenes, to optimize some things, just to get rid of the unnecessary assets. It wasn't like anything too specific creatively. It's just about managing stuff, and he would write like a script that would help with rendering, because with Eevee, like we rendered not even using the built-in render kind of system. It's like, I think it's called viewport render, which is basically like it's much faster, but this didn't allow for batch rendering, and so Konstantin should write a script that would kind of automate that and allow us to render using viewport render and batch render. So, but yeah, there's so many tools available already that like there wasn't really a need. And we just used a lot of like also geometry nodes setups, which is basically like creating tools within Blender. But they were not that complicated, just some basic stuff.
Yeah, and with Eevee, like I think I've talked to many people that when they find out that you did the final rendering using Eevee, or at least the viewport iteration of Eevee, people are just super impressed that you got such an amazing end result with it, because I feel like people are trying to push it in their own end, and they're like Gints, what the heck did you do? like some kind of dark magic over there. But I want to talk a little bit about that aesthetic of the film, right? Where you're limited to Eevee, which again limits actually which shaders you can use. Like you can't even put a gobo in a light, right? So you gotta, work work around that kind of stuff. And the painterly look, I absolutely dig. And dare I say, it's like very Ghibli-esque. Is what kind of inspired the look? Because I know the look that you had in previous films, like Away, and there's a little bit of that there, but you really added a little bit more detail to the look and the textures and the shaders of the characters. Like I love the bird character, like just I was paying attention to all the feathers and how they reacted to the light, and I'm trying to think like, how did he do that?
Yeah, like we used Eevee not just to kind of save time, but I think it's also in some ways better for kind of more stylized rendering. Like there are some nodes that are in Eevee which are not in cycles, like the shader to RGB, which like are better, like helped us with these toon shaders. So and it just it's not just to save the actual rendering time, but to speed up the process of lighting scenes and kind of just creating all the stuff. That was very creatively helpful to kind of be able to make adjustments very quickly and try out different variations. Like I could like try and shooting these scenes from different camera angles and quickly and render them out, and so it helped. It sped up the whole creation process. But I don't know like how to describe. Like, yeah, we just experimented a lot. It's very art directed. Like often like people just think about like creating realistic textures and kind of that, but I think it's much more important to focus on creating strong images and to kind of direct the light in an interesting way, and so there's a lot of like cheating being done that it only works from this very specific angle, and there's a lot of like lights are animated and turned on and off, and there's a lot of in every scene and every shot every shader is adjusted slightly to look right from this angle. So there's a lot of like tweaking and kind of, yeah, every shot has kind of a lot of like human effort put into it. It's not some automated system, and every shot just requires different needs, and it helped like like this helped that I was just basically importing everything into my own scene. It wasn't like people were working on their own files, but we were like the animators had the files linked up. So but when they finished, I just imported everything, and so I had everything like in an internal file, and this kind of helped me to not to be too overwhelmed, and I could make adjustments and break stuff within the shot, and I could like add like a blend shape or something just in this specific shot, and that wasn't, yeah, too worried about kind of breaking any system, because they were like I was breaking stuff, but this didn't affect all the rest of the assets, so I could, yeah, and there are many like cheats being done, and like assets are scaled up and down on every shot just to look right from this specific angle, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's I can't explain the whole look in this short conversation there.
Oh no,
It
don't
would
want you to
take
do that or
months.
spill all your secrets, but I'm sure you'll share on your social media. But I think that's like interesting to know that I feel like people try to make these perfect light setups that work for everything. But like I said, some of those shots are very sweeping. It's one continuous shot. So sometimes you don't even think of the easy thing of like, well, let's just animate a light coming on and off. Like, let's not overthink this. Let's not try to build this crazy geometry node thing where like the view of the camera turns things on and it controls the light somehow. Like just brute force it. Like just turn stuff on and off. Don't overthink it. So I love that. And I love, like you mentioned that, you know, it's not automated. Like I think we all can see the artist's hands so much throughout the film. And I think that's great, especially when everyone's moving more and more away from the human element of creating art and stuff like that. And I don't want to say the 2-letter word, but I will say that, like, you know, you've been battle testing Blender at the highest level. You've really blazed a trail for other artists. I can't tell you like how many artists, like including myself, that are just like, holy cow, like that just shut up a lot of people that said Blender is not an industry standard tool, right? And that perception. And you said you're using Blender for your next film, but I was wondering, are you kind of working with Blender in any way? Like, I know you did an interview with them. Like, did you come to them with your production insights and you're like, fellas, so there's some things that I'd like some help with for my next film here. Could you make my life easier, and like implement these things? Was there any kind of conversations like that happening?
There was no need really, because I kind of didn't really need anything. Like it felt like there were some like custom scripts that I mentioned that our team would write, but I don't know, like yeah, but they've been very supportive, and maybe for the next one we can try and engage them more directly. But I didn't feel like, yeah, like I needed anything too specific, because yeah, sometimes it's good to have some limitations as well, and kind of not having these tools kind of forces you to come up with some original way of doing things, and like with the reflections in the water in Eevee, which are complicated, so we would kind of do a lot of cheating and kind of figure out again just for them to work on this specific angle. I don't know. Yeah, I wouldn't. Maybe like, yeah, Martin who did the water. He's been involved with Blender. I think he'd
Right.
contributed even to the software before we worked together. So he might do again something with them. But yeah, I feel like I don't really need anything too big. It's just some small things. I have everything I need. I don't know.
Well, it's funny because you mentioned you are updating constantly, and like, because I mean, Blender's like, they're developing at such a rapid pace. They're adding all these cool tools like all the time. Like looking at the future of Blender, like there was the news recently that, you know, the Dylan Goo Studios, they're working with the core development team with their Goo engine. And like, as an NPR fan, you got to be like super excited about hearing that they're going to be focusing on, you know, all the NPR stuff. But what like, you got Clay Pencil 2, which is super cool, that has coming out with a new version. What are you most excited about as far as the future of Blender? Are you paying any attention to it? Or are you just like, I'm focusing on my films, and when something cool comes out, maybe I'll update and I'll use that too?
Yeah, I am paying a little bit attention. I was really during production of Flow, but now I'm kind of just writing my next film and kind of doing music. So I'm doing some visual development, but I'm just like figuring out the basic layout, and I'm not really looking into specific like lighting and about creating the final images. So I haven't really had time to like learn about all the new features, but like it's like this whole promotional tour is like a full-time job. So I'm looking forward to kind of, yeah, going back home and like learning all about all the new features that have come out since then. But yeah, I'm just trying to focus more on the storytelling and the big picture. I might look for some more kind of art director or someone who can like delve deeper into the shaders and let them do that. Um, but yeah, it's probably has been so many new features even in the past year that I haven't had a chance to learn about. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, but I mean, I love that because, you know, I always say it's all about the artist and not the tool, right? And I feel like you're the perfect example of that. Like you've shown so many artists that with the tools they already have, like you said, Blender is available to everyone. It doesn't cost anything. Like I see photos of you on your MacBook working on shots, so it's not like you need this big PC rig or anything like that. You know, I've heard you're in LA right now. There's some animation schools that are starting to pick up and use Blender. You have so many artists looking up to you, I think now. Like what advice would you give any artists that are looking at Flow and they're like, wow, this is possible. Like this is possible in the app I use every day. Like what would you tell anyone that's like looking to get into short films? Like where would you suggest they even begin? Because I feel like so many of us are overwhelmed by the process. We got imposter syndrome, of course.
I don't know. It's just I learned the most by making the films I like the least. Like you have to make those bad drawings or bad films or whatever. You have to kind of put in the hours, and and it takes time, but you also might sometimes you spend a year on something and people might not really care about it, but you can create something in 15 minutes and it can have a huge impact on someone. So it's just about figuring out. I think people really care about the idea and the emotion and the story, and if you can figure that out, people can forgive if there are some technical imperfections or whatever, and just using these imperfections as well. You can. It's almost like in jazz, when you make a mistake, you have to kind of own it and make it part of the appeal. And also in animation, you can have some rough parts, and it can be very appealing. I don't know. It's just making. I just tried. I learned by making a lot of stuff, and also by putting it out there and kind of hearing what people think, and that can be scary. Because at first you kind of it takes time for your abilities and skills to catch up with your taste and your you want to be great at first, but it takes really a long time, and you have to kind of just put in the time, and there's no easy way to it, I think.
Yeah, no shortcuts. Like they say, failure is the best teacher, right? So I think that's super cool that you said that, some of your least favorite things actually taught you the most. You got to get all the bad ideas out to get to the good ones, right?
Yeah. Well, it's hard. If it would be easy, sometimes it's good that it requires challenge and
or everyone would do it, right?
Yeah.
If it's easy.
And everyone has the ability. I think now we have the access to tools and the resources, but you still need effort, and you need experience. You need to have lived life to know what to talk about as well, and to kind of have ideas.
Yeah. Well, you're in LA right now. I hope you're enjoying your life right now and soaking it all in and living in the moment and experiencing everything. And, but I just want to say good luck. I love the film. I know so many people are huge fans of the film and are super excited to hear what you're doing next. Good luck this weekend. And thank you so much for your time. I hope there's no ice cream that is going to be needed in your future here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gints.
Take care.
Well, since our little chat, Flo did in fact win that Oscar, with Gints personally thanking Blender in his acceptance speech. What a massive moment for the indie film industry. The fact that Flo took home an Oscar is so incredibly empowering. It proves that anyone can bring their ideas to life using accessible and free tools. No more excuses. I mean, you can go out there and tell your story right now. Huge thanks to Gints again for sharing his journey with us and for reminding us that human artistry and storytelling matters more than technical perfection. His advice to learn through creating and embracing failure as the best teacher is something we can all take to heart. Now, if you haven't seen Flo yet, what are you doing? Do yourself a favor and check it out. And if you enjoyed this conversation, make sure you never miss an episode. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube, follow us on your favorite podcaster, and if you're feeling generous, leave us a nice little review. Massive congrats again to Gints, and as always, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, keep on creating.